Hello, hello, visionaries. I am so excited to be interviewing Marni Battista. Did I pronounce that right?
Pretty close, Battista, but Battista sounds pretty close enough. I say yes. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, good. Oh my God, I always forget to actually ask that in the beginning. I know it's so professional to actually ask this before you jump online, but I get so eager and just jump right in. So there's
It's
that.
all right. There's only one of me, so if you get close, if you Google me, like it's not like my name's Jennifer Brown. So I think it's all good.
It's all good. Thank you, Marty, for being gracious. And I'm super excited to have you here and being the first podcast interview in this series, really highlighting women coaches and consultants and just women transformational leaders and visionaries who are up to big things and also been on this bumpy road of entrepreneurship I just had this sense that I shared a little bit before we got started that I've always say that successful people do it anyway. We just kind of jump in and do what it takes. We're not smarter. We don't have more money. We don't have better connections. We just kind of scrappy, make it happen kind of stuff. And I wanted to share a little bit of those stories behind the scenes of what it actually takes to scale beyond six figures and just the journey that we have been on getting there. And so thank you so much for being here.
So happy.
Yeah. So I thought we would just start. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and just like what got you to become an entrepreneur in the first place and stepping into this crazy ride?
Well, it's kind of funny in that when I was younger, I didn't say like I want to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I wanted to be a teacher. And my dad, who comes from 100-year generations of entrepreneurs, said, don't be a teacher. You'll never make any money. And I got married, I got divorced, and I was like, well, now I'm going to be a teacher. So I got my master's in education and I didn't make any money. But most of all, I realized that inside a system, right? Like in a professional organization, because I was a teacher and it was a private school, but it was still, an organization, right? And I had all these great ideas and I wanted to innovate and I wanted to create. And I kept getting these messages like, from my boss and people around, like, you don't work that hard. It'll make everyone else look bad, right? Or if you do that, then everyone will have to do that. It was like almost like the bar was set like in the middle, and that's just not how I roll. So when that job ended, I sort of found my place, divorced, needing money, and having a master's degree now in education that I didn't really want to use. I decided that I wanted to write a book, Madeline. And I was like, I'm going to write a book about dating because I'm single. I didn't plan on being single. I had some funny stories. I was going to call it the Effed Up Girl's Guide to Dating. And I started writing this book and I put it out to agents and they were like, you don't have a business. A book is not a business. You have to build a platform. And this was in 2000. So by the way, this was in 2008 before, there were such things as influencers. Mm-hmm. And I was like, a platform, is that a shoe? Like what? Like, what is that? And that's when I decided, like, what's the why behind the book? The book is that I want to help women who are suffering in the dating and relationship space to fall in love with themselves and then find someone to love. And that was sort of my journey. And that was the genesis. It was like an idea that just felt right. I will never forget the moment, like in the kitchen where like it all came together. I was like, book, coach. I had started getting involved in personal development. So, and it wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, wait, everyone in my family is an entrepreneur, because I never set out with that intention.
That's amazing. So it started with a book. I mean, I just love that. It's like a banana peel, right? You just kind of slid in there. Started with a book and then build a business around that. Like, that's an incredible, unique angle. I'll put it that way. And so what has been one of the like steepest learning curves you feel like as you started becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I'm like laughing to myself because you and I are in the same group right now. And there's this mission to do this marketing thing. And so my steepest curve from the very beginning has been marketing, like marketing copy, marketing technology, all of this stuff, right? So the very, very beginning, I hired someone to do it because one of my problems has never been hire people and delegate. That's not one thing I struggle with. But I learned something really important over 14 years, which someone who's really smart, but I don't personally like, told me. So I didn't take the advice because I don't like the person, which is another lesson. But the advice was don't delegate what you can't do yourself. So in the journey of the 14 years, I sort of like relied on people. And I will tell you that person number one that I hired in 2008 to help me was very enthusiastic and very ambitious and had great visions for possibility. And as a result, would build things that I didn't say, yes, I want to build and pay for. Right. And I don't know if you've ever been down that road, but you're like, he was like, we need a new CRM. Like maybe I was on like MailChimp or something. And this was like back when everyone was on Infusionsoft and Entreport came out. And he had bright, shiny syndrome, right? And so literally one Monday, he's like, I moved you on to Entreport. I'm like, well, first of all, what is that? And second of all, and then here's like a big bill, right? So that was number one. And then person number two, lovely person. Both these people were very lovely, like great people, which is why I believed in them and trusted them. Person number two didn't have the ability to get past their own limitations. And because my lesson in this has always been like, why did I just trust things with other people? Was a mistake, right? Like, and I didn't take the time to really learn it. I just delegated it. And so when I finally let go of all this team in the last like 6 or 7 months, like, I'm like, oh, now I better learn it. And it's still kind of hard and not fun. It's not my zone of genius. But I think that if I do decide to ever like scale or hire any of those things, that level, that bigger level again, it'll be a very different experience. So don't delegate what you don't know how to do.
Yeah, that's good. That's sage advice for sure. I think that's powerful because you don't even know what questions to ask. You don't even know what to looking for. You don't even know what the pitfalls are. And it can definitely be tricky to manage somebody if you don't have at least clear benchmarks of what you're looking for.
Well, yeah, they kind of have all the power, right? Because if like my previous person would be like, you know, you kind of don't understand. This is way more complicated and way harder than you can imagine. And that's why we're not doing A, B, and C. And I sort of was like, oh, okay. And now like the part about this that's the most, I think, salient is that because I didn't believe in myself and my own capability, right? There's a part of my brain that's like, I'm a nursery school teacher. I don't understand business, right? And so I had to I was like, my friend says, this is tuition. Yeah. So I spent lots of tuition, old listeners, to learn these mistakes. Probably $500,000 at least.
Yeah, right. $500,000. Yeah. Yeah, that's a sticker shock. But yes, but that's what happens, right? We have these upper limits, I call them, that kind of gets in our way. And sometimes we just don't see them for a long time. Or at least we just move around them because it's not that much it's not very comfortable to confront them, right? So we're moving around them. I mean, and this is why I say I feel like entrepreneurship is one of the fastest personal growth vehicles. I mean, if you really want to be jumping in there and really excel in your personal growth, being an entrepreneur, because in the beginning, the business is us. And so everything that we ever hold us back is going to come and confront us. And we somehow have to navigate those blocks and figure out a way through.
Yeah. And I think so like the biggest like urban legend, right, is that when you're new, you go out and you hire all these business coaches or funnel experts, or in my case, marketing people, right? And if you don't have someone, either that person or someone else who's like your spiritual coach, your spiritual guide, helping you uncover the blocks and moving past them, all those investments that you make, you know, and I always had a coach, like I call it a spiritual coach from day one. So I wish I would have learned my lessons a little bit faster, but at least when I had them, I had someone being like, so what are you going to do about it? And so I really think that that's like the smartest thing people can do is work on themselves as hard as they're working on their funnels.
Brilliant. I love that. And so what do you think is like the biggest up level you had to do with your mindset and just your perspective to grow your business?
God, I'm like rolling my eyes at myself because it was so painful and sad. So I got involved in a coaching program, like, you know, a community, guru-itis. And like I said, I'm not afraid to invest. I'm not afraid to hire. So I invested a shit ton of money and I got all in, and their system was definitely, and this was like 2017, 2018. It was like a lot of Facebook advertising, and it was, you know, burn through leads, buy or die, like all that stuff. Right. And so, and I'm pretty good at enrollment. And I was sort of told like, I'm being too picky about my leads, and that if I only want to work with like really qualified leads, I can't scale. And so I need to lower my standard. And also I need to be more hardcore in enrollment because I'm saving people's lives. And I was like, I got this. I can give me a task. I will do it. Right. Cause like you said, like we'll do it no matter what. And I could just feel like a part of my soul dying. And so my pinnacle moment. So I would go and I'd say to my mentors, like, this isn't working. And they'd be like, it's your mindset. It's your mindset. And I'd be like, F you. Like, I'm working on my mindset. I'm doing, So I had this moment and I was talking to this woman. I, at the time, was only doing dating. And this woman lived in New York. I think she might have been unemployed. And the way that I was doing sales at the time was like, if you don't buy now, it's double the price. And nobody, it was just like, so, it makes my skin crawl that I even did it. But anyway, I did it. And this woman was like so stressed out about having to make a decision, right? And she gave me her $1,000. And the next day she wrote me this really long email about how she needs her money back. She has like a hole in her wall covered by like plastic with duct tape to keep the rats out. They're going to turn off her. Could she please have her money back? And I was like, you made a decision. I'm saving your life, and I was like, this is not right. And that's when I went back to those mentors and I said, you know what? I feel like you guys hit me in the head and gave me brand amnesia and you were trying to make me be who I'm not. And you know what? I guess I can't scale then because I'm not going to force people who have rats in their house to spend on a high ticket coaching program. And so maybe Facebook advertising won't work for me. And that was really hard because it was like, I felt intimidated by these. It was like they were like the board or the group or the head coaches or whatever. And so that was like, I had to remember who I was.
So such a powerful story, so much to unpack. I mean, really the epiphany of the bro marketing tactics, the hustle culture in our industry is a little bit nutty. And the whole shaming and blaming clients, one, shaming and blaming them for not investing, and then shaming and blaming them if they're not getting results.
Oh yeah, it was,
like the next level of really putting a thumb on people in not in an empowering way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can feel like my body's like, oh, I can't relate to that. But that just really shows that there's a dark side of that thing, like that you were talking about, like we'll do whatever, And I think, and I can't speak for all women, but I'm 57. I was like raised in a time where men know best, men are in business. I was raised that way. Right. And I thought I was married for 17 years. I thought I was going to be a mom forever. I didn't even think I would ever have to work. Right. And so being in a room with powerful men and one powerful woman with a lot of masculine energy felt really scary to me, right? And so I think that's been the biggest thing over time is like every time something's not working, it's that I'm out of alignment. It's not that the strategy isn't working. And like you said, I'm trying to avoid it. I don't want to face it. I don't want to have that scary conversation.
That's powerful, because I feel like so much of the work that I do is like rescuing CEOs from these places that we get ourselves into. And I know how to kind of, rescue people out of those dark spaces because I've been in all of those dark places myself. But, I just really appreciate just the vulnerability and of the sharing and really talking to these points because so much of our industry is putting the shiny, beautiful us out there on Instagram worthy, binge worthy content. But then there is this other piece of how we actually get there and the evolution, right, of the journey really that's happens. And it's when you really start to looking at these people and utilize it as that personal growth experience and journey. And you get closer and closer to really being in alignment with who you are. And really tapping into your unique genius, right? Because that's what happens along the way as we are refining and evolving with the business. And ultimately, we get to have even bigger impact. So tell me a little bit about like how this journey now is like really allowing you to maybe even tap into your ideal clients in a much more profound way or really feeling like, wow, like I'm actually get to do what I love to do now.
Yay. Well, so here's the thing. I believe that the universe whispers, and then when you don't listen, it screams. So 2020, right before, like a week before COVID lockdown, I got into a really intense ski accident and I broke 7 bones in my sacrum. And if you don't know enough about this, thank God. But when I would talk to medical professionals about it, they'd be like, "Did you have a car accident?" Right? You don't just fall and break your sacrum. It's freaking like a hard bone. So I was on my back like 10 weeks. I think when I looked back at my steps, I was like, I think maybe like 100 a day, 130 just to the bathroom. I had a walker. My husband had to put me on the toilet, like all that stuff, right? And I couldn't do anything. I was a very busy person who was stuck. And that's when we were talking about human design. So someone had referred me to this person. And, so I had this session and he was like, this is a metaphor for like, you didn't just break your physical self, your soul was broken and you need to like rebuild and recreate a strong foundation because your sacrum is like your foundation. And very long story cut short is that my dad died also. And I was like, what am I going to do? I had to slow down. And as I started to recover, I discovered these 7 spiritual questions that are from the Old Testament. I always say that if they had a better publicist, you would know them more than you know the 10 Commandments because I think they're so much more juicy. And I started to think, because my dad had died and he was like mumbling about money and stuff at the end of his life. And I was like, oh my God, is that really what you want to be thinking about at the end, And I came across these 7 questions and I was like, oh, I had 7 fractures. Then there are these 7 questions. Let me dive in. And so all that to say that I started thinking if I redefine success according to these 7 questions, because the story goes that you go to the pearly gates and they're like, oh, did you leave a meaningful life? Here's the questions. You can answer yes, no. And that started me realigning. Like I became passionate about this. And as a result, I was like, I'm sick of talking about dating. I love talking about dating and I can help you with my eyes closed, but like dating never was about dating. It was about finding yourself. And how can you do that and then create your whole life, including relationship, from the place where you define success from these 7 questions. And now I have a business and I sold a book about it. So it all came for a full circle. I tried to sell that book about dating for 14 years. And when I finally wrote a book about my journey in reinvention, it all came into place. And so that's what I'm doing with clients now. I'm talking about reinvention, talking about designing your life, not living a default life. I'm talking about defining what success means to you so that you can stay aligned and reach your goals in a material sense. And I'm having so much more fun. I'm excited about it again.
So cool. Yeah, powerful. And I just love, I think this is the piece, right? It's hard in a moment when you have the doors closed in our faces, like with that first book. I mean, obviously you poured your heart and soul into that book as well about relationship. But how the universe is like closing the doors so that you keep the journey going. And then like you will finally open a door when you like hit the nail on the head and you're finally there delivering the message that you were meant to deliver. And
yeah.
Really, really powerful.
Yeah. So I ended up, I lived in LA for like 25 years. So part of my own sort of reinvention process was I got clear on what the problem that I really had was. It wasn't the problems that I thought I had. So I thought my problems were like, my business isn't getting the right level. I'm like, my husband's being annoying. Like my kids left the nest. Oh, I had this accident. What I realized was I was really actually afraid of change. I was terrified of change. There I was like 54 years old at the time. My mom had died at 64. I just had this moment in my office because my mom, a medium told me that my mom's going to come to me in butterflies. And sitting at my desk and this butterfly came and it just hit me like, if I only had 9 more years to live, would I want to keep pushing and living here in my house, waiting for my kids to come back, like trying to like relive like the best years of my life, whatever. And so I was like, no. So sold the house. My husband and I got an RV. We traveled around the country for a year, decided to be nomads, slow travel. And that's kind of what we're doing now. And so everything came into alignment, where I live, how I live, who I work with, what I do every day.
So I find this fascinating. So you said your biggest fear was, change. And now you live change, like you literally, because I lived in an RV too, and I was a nomad for 2 years with my husband. And so that life is intense if you're
It's
not interested in change, because
so funny. Yes.
every day is a little bit of a, I mean, we have a lot of predictability in our homes, and we lived in our communities. We have our friends, like all the little things. But when you're on the open road, it's a whole different ball of wax.
Every day. And that's what's so funny about it, is because there's this whole like fantasy about living in an RV. People like, that's on my bucket list. So much freedom. And I'm like, no.
I mean, like, I remember when we bought our fifth wheel, you might have been smarter than us, but we didn't even know if we were going to be able to pull the thing out of our driveway the first time we were going to travel across the country with it. I mean, we had no idea what we could do with it. It was terrifying most of the time. For the first,
they're big.
Yeah. We had a 36-foot fifth wheel, and I feel like the first 3 months of setting it up and breaking it down, I always felt it was going to tip over, and everything we owned and plus ourselves going to die, and everything are going to go to smithereens. It was like pure terrifying moments.
Well, and that's what my book is actually about. So my book is about dealing with change on the road, right? And like the journey that we went on. And so it was perfect, right? For a person who's terrified of change. And I told my husband that just the other day, because he was sort of in the beginning, like pushing getting out of LA and whatever, but he really helped teach me that change is okay and change is actually necessary for us to evolve, and our soul wants us to evolve. So I'm grateful for that lesson, although it was pretty messy, I'm not going to lie.
The best ones are, right? The bigger the breakthrough, bigger the breakdown, the bigger the breakthrough. Love it.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. And so where can people find more and learn more about you?
Well, that's a fun answer I have. So mostly go on Facebook to Marni Battista, and you can do send me a little friend request. If you want like goodies and stuff, if you're interested in dating, go to datingwithdignity.com, because I am really good at it. And I'm so happy to help you do it easily. And then if you're interested in really this life design piece, go to the Institute for Living Courageously.com.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And last but not least, what is your sage advice for someone looking to scale past six figures? Where do you think they should focus?
I do a really quick story, because this is really huge. So there's a story, and I think it was like in the early 1900s, and I think it's a fable, but it was a story about this guy, and he said that he could walk on a tightrope from Canada, Niagara Falls to like America. I don't know if you ever heard this story. I can't remember his name. But anyway, and so he walked across this tightrope, and people watched and they were like, yay. And then he was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn how to do it backwards. And so he did it backwards, and people were like, yay. And then he did it carrying a wheelbarrow, and all this crowd formed, and they were like, yay. And then he walked backwards. And so then there was like, announcer. It was like a big fanfare and event. And they were like, to the audience, do you believe he can carry a person in this wheelbarrow across the tightrope? And the crowd was like, yes, we believe, like, yay. It was like crazy. And they said, okay, who wants to get in? And nobody raised their hand. Now, this story is because you can't just believe that you're going to be successful. You can't just be like, believe that you have a dream and be like, yeah, it's possible. You have to believe in. Because believing in is getting in the wheelbarrow, and it's easy to go, yes, I believe. But when you're faced with those crossroad moments, when you hear, the soul call you to do something different or to stop doing something or whatever it is that the gurus say you should do, listen and believe in your knowledge and your strength. And you wouldn't be having the dream if there weren't a part of you that were capable of doing it. So believe in yourself and trust.
So powerful. I love that story. Great visual too. I don't know if I would get into that wheelbarrow per se, but I mean, I got myself some pretty hairy moments, but still.
Well, it's funny though, when you buy that fifth wheel, you're believing in your dream. When you put up your website, or you make that first post, or you raise your prices, you're believing in, and there's so many people that believe but don't believe in. And that's why I'm still here 14 years later, and I see a lot of the people that started with me are gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there is a power in both trusting and believing in, but I also believe that this story is really about also taking action.
Yes.
Taking those first steps and, applying faith it's not just this blind faith, but actually stepping in and doing the piece that needs to happen to make things, to move things forward.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Marni.
Thank
It's
you for
been so
having
much
me.
fun to chat with you, and I
You
love your
too.
stories.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.